My name is Markas Henry. I am an associate professor here at the University of Colorado Boulder in the Department of Theater and Dance. I'm the resident faculty costume designer, but in addition to my job here, I'm also a set designer as well. I kind of just fell into it, actually. I entered into design from after being an actor, which is, I think, how many of us enter into the field. And I had no idea that the design area existed when I first started in theater. I actually kind of stumbled into it through actually an art teacher when I was in college. I was an art major, and I was being asked to kind of declare my studio and what I wanted to study for the next 3 years, and I couldn't really pick a studio. So she started quizzing me about everything, all my likes and dislikes. And so some of the lists that I came up with was theater and architecture and art history and acting and television and movies, and everything kind of led her to ask me if I ever thought about theater design before. And I said I had never even heard of that before. And so she hooked me up with a theater design professor at my undergrad, and the rest is history. Well, the main responsibility is to create the world visually, and also the actual playing area. With that, you dictate all the movement, all the blocking, all the pictures that will come forth out of that production. It really depends. Sometimes things move along very, very quickly and very clearly. Other times there are hiccups and road bumps all along the way. So it really depends. Part of it depends whether all of the team is in one place and it's easy to have conversations. Sometimes people are all over the country, and so that slows down the wheel of progress. But generally we're usually working at least 6 months out, and so that you have a pretty clear roadmap between the 4 and 6 month, so that by 2 months out the scene shop knows kind of what the build is, and then usually that build happens over a month or 6 weeks or so. But generally usually about 6 months out we start refining the process. I've worked on projects that decisions were made a year in advance. I've made projects that we never made finished design decisions, and so that continued to happen right up until opening. So I think it really depends on the project, or it depends on whether it's a new play, a world premiere, an existing piece that's being created, or whether it's something that has existed. So I think that kind of helps to kind of set the pace, is what kind of production is being created.
Design.
Well, everything begins and ends with the director, and so they're kind of the top of the pyramid, and so generally a set designer gets their job because of the director, and usually the director has a concept, a point of view, and something that we as a design team follows. So in the end, the buck stops with the director. Ultimately, I think it's the collaboration, the creative collaboration, where not just the director and the set designer, but in the best of all worlds, the entire design team can talk with the director to hash out ideas, concepts, and talk about what the play means and what the point of view is and what our goals are for the production. Sometimes that doesn't always happen that way. But in the best of all worlds, the entire design team is part of the creative process and the discovery. And to me, when that happens, when it happens that way, that everybody is kind of an equal player at the table, those are actually some of the most rewarding kind of projects and collaborations that I've had. Well, I think a good attitude is always expected and appreciated, but ultimately, it's a lot of hard work. I think that's the most important characteristic, is that ability to roll up your sleeves and work hard, and in a way, that's all tied in, I think, with the passion of what we do, and the creative passions and the creative urges. So I always kind of jokingly tell my students that that this has to be, what we do has to be oxygen to you. It has to be something that's a life force because the work is hard, the hours are long, the money is not great often, and so it really has to be something other than just a day job. And so what is that other portion of it that sustains you and lifts you up and kind of makes it not only something that is rewarding, but also something that's enjoyable, and that's fun. That's one of the things I think that drew most people to theater in the early days, is the fact that this is, it's a place of crazy, wacky people. It's the land of misfit toys, as I call it. But ultimately, that it's a place that's fun and enjoyable. Well, I think, my favorite set design to work on is probably different than my favorite costume design to work on. Probably my favorite set design was something I did within the last little over a year ago at Curious Theater in Denver, called The Whipping Man. And so that was a very involved and very big production of kind of an antebellum Civil War townhouse mansion that is partially destroyed, and it takes place in April of 1865. And so there was a lot of scenic demands that set needed, and so and in the end the production looked exactly like what I imagined in my head. So that was a very rewarding experience. From a costume point of view, there have been a couple of things that have been kind of standouts, and most of them kind of in my kind of former career before I came here as kind of a Broadway associate and assistant. So that the big project that I worked on was kind of like was kind of the pinnacle of my career then, which was working on the original Broadway production of Thoroughly Modern Millie. So, and the team won a costume design Tony for that work. So that's right up there as far as one of the biggest moments. Well, it's a good question. I mean, I started off my career in New York City after I went to graduate school, and so my kind of career and my world was based off of that experience and that move, so I can only kind of speak to my own success and my own opportunities. But I think there are many other places other than New York, Chicago and Minneapolis, Baltimore. There's a lot of places that great theater is happening, and so I think it really depends on what kind of theater you want to do, because there are many different types. I knew that I wanted to kind of play in the big leagues, and I wanted to kind of have a Broadway career. So that meant that I had to kind of go to New York. That was the place where that was going to happen. I guess the best piece of advice I have is to, again, find the love in it. Because it's challenging. The work is hard, as I said earlier. The pay is not phenomenal. So again, it has to be something that really is a part of your DNA and part of your kind of creative soul. So that kind of tenacity, observing everything around you, whether it's architecture, art, people on the street, but just starting to kind of notice the nuances and kind of peculiarities of life. Those are the things those are the heartbeats, and those are the things I think, those observations are what bring a kind of personal component to any design. And so I think that's the most important thing to start developing. And I think it takes years and years and years and sometimes decades to begin to become a master at what we do. I kind of feel like several decades on, I'm just now starting to get the hang of it. So I think part of it is patience, tenacity, and kind of a clear vision of what it is that you want to do.